What's going on, people, and welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to do a match reaction to the game that didn't finish too long ago. Hearts 3, Celtic 1 in the Scottish Premiership. Celtic fall into Hearts in the capital, going 8 points behind the Jambos in the league. That's the league over. I don't care what anybody says, that was disgraceful in the second half. First half was Celtic with a better side, but second half, I have no idea what happened. Celtic they were back to the same Celtic that we've seen all season. It was pathetic from Celtic. Everybody needs to go now. Brendan, I think, needs to be sacked today, right now, or he needs to resign. Because I would rather he resign, because I don't trust that board to get the right man in to replace him, because it's going to be Maloney or Roy Keane or somebody terrible. They need to go as well. Yeah, they don't affect what goes on the pitch in terms of the players and how they play, but they're the ones who have put us in this situation. They've cost us the league. They've cost us the league, and in my opinion, and Europe as well, they should not be in charge of the club. Desmond, if he actually had a fucking clue, would sack these people. But he obviously doesn't. He probably didn't even watch the game today, that silly old prick in Ireland, He's lazy. He's a selfish owner. Well, no, he's not even the owner. This is what annoys me. He's not the owner. He walks around like he owns the club. He doesn't. He's such a selfish tosser, Desmond. Do the decent thing and get rid of the board, because they're the major problem. Some of these players as well. Dane Murray is young, pardon me, but he was horrific. Absolutely horrific. Austin Trusty should have played. Murray stayed on the pitch the whole bloody game. Rodgers, what was he thinking? Keeping Murray on. Murray was a major problem today. I'm sorry, but I know he's young, but he's just nowhere near the standard to start regularly for Celtic. Scales was horrific from the highlights that I've seen, just horrendous. Tanecki getting taken off. Forrest coming on, doing nothing. People saying Forrest played all right when he came on. Yeah, but he doesn't offer anything anymore. He should not be coming on. It should be Balaguisha and Tanecki on the wings. That's what it should be, but Rodgers doesn't do that. He takes off one of them two and brings on Forrest every time. Terrific. Negron's got a stinking attitude. Absolutely horrific. Today, again, not a winger. He's not a winger. That's not his fault in playing there, but he had a chance to put us 2-1 up, and instead of actually firing the ball into the net, he didn't take it. Horrendous from Negron. Pathetic. I thought Engels did okay, but he did really badly fade in the second half. McGregor was excellent in the first half from what I've seen. Took his goal really well. But Hearts bullied us. Hearts dominate the second half. I think Hearts started better, as you expect. Celtic came into it. Celtic took control of the rest of the first half once they scored, and they should have been in front. But the second half was just a complete and utter collapse. Celtic were pathetic. Hearts were excellent. Hearts are the champions, in my opinion. Pathetic from Celtic. Pathetic from Rodgers. Pathetic from the players. Pathetic from the board. They all need to go. There needs to be mass protests outside Celtic Park tonight and for the rest of the season, because this is just absolutely outrageous. 8 points behind Hearts, and Hearts have a better goal difference as well. It's pathetic. It really is. Celtic are going to lose the league, and it's their own fault. They're their own fault. Sabotage Europe. Even if we get through the Europa League knockout phase, then I still don't think it saves the board. The board need to leave. Rodgers, I think, will go before the end of the season. Whether that's him being sacked or him resigning, it's got to happen now. He's tried. It's not worked. He's the problem now, along with the board. They need to all go. But the board probably won't go, which is annoying. Not this season anyway. The board will probably go, hopefully, in the long-term future of the club. But we're at risk of not even finishing second, in my opinion. We're pathetic. 2 just consecutive defeats in the league. We deserve to lose both of them. We're pathetic. We're shit. We're weak mentally. We're weak physically. We get easily bullied off the ball. Rio Hatate. Oh, my God. Honestly, Hatate today, from the highlights that I've seen, please get rid of Hatate. He was a good player once upon a time for us. Since Ange is gone, nowhere near the same player. Completely lost his way. So many slack passes today. Pathetic from Hatate, from what I've seen. Donovan had a really bad, tough time against Hearts' winger. He got past Donovan quite a lot of times, but Donovan is young. I don't think Donovan was the worst player on the pitch, to be honest. I think he stepped up in the second half. One of the only few, to be honest. Tanecki got taken off, but yet he was our best player. So stupid. He was getting away from Hearts players so easily at times from the highlights that I've seen in the first half. And then Rod just takes him off and brings on Forrest. Just stupid, you know, and Balaguisha goes on the left and does nothing. You know, Balaguisha as well, you know, very disappointed with Balaguisha. I'm starting to doubt whether he was a good signing or not now. Didn't do anything again when he came on from the highlights I've seen. But the game started. Hearts were just on top of us, you know. We were nervous as anything, like a load of sheep in a field, you know. Scared of a werewolf jumping out of the woods, you know, just pathetic, you know. We literally were a lamb to the slaughter in the first 10 minutes or so. You know, Hearts were threatening us every time. You know, Donovan was getting beaten every time by Gadazidis. I can't remember the guy's name, but he's a really good player, that guy. You know, he was excellent today from the highlights I've seen. Hearts' best player by far. You know, he was roasting Donovan every single time. You know, Donovan was getting no help from Negron either. Negron was moaning. Negron was throwing his arms up in the air. Negron was a massive problem today, along with a load of people. You know, people were moaning at each other again. You know, what kind of attitude is that? You know, fans are annoyed as it is, and then you're arguing with one another, not taking any responsibility. They're responsible for their own performances, the players. There's no point moaning at Negron, for example. Negron moaning at McGregor, McGregor moaning at Hatate, Hatate moaning at Donovan, you know, Scales moaning at Murray, Murray moaning at Scales. It's everybody as a collective is downgraded, pathetic. They're pathetic. They're a pathetic bunch of players. Not watching a game for the rest of the season. They can kiss my arse. They're shit. And they've lost the league today. And they're so pathetic. But yeah, Hearts started the game the better side as I expected. I knew Hearts were going to win today. There was no way Hearts were going to lose this game. Hearts are better than us. They proved it today. They deserved their 3 points. We're shit. We're absolutely garbage. But yeah, Hearts started on the front foot. Got the goal that they deserved. You know, it was a bit unlucky from Dane Murray. You know, Dane Murray, the ball comes into the box. You know, Shankland whips it across. You know, Dane Murray goes, well, before then, Schmeichel was really unlucky. Schmeichel made an excellent save, tipped it onto the post, came out. You know, where is the fullback? You know, nobody has a clue where Shankland is. Shankland knocks it across. Dane Murray goes to clear it, hits him on the shin and goes into the back of the net. Utterly pathetic from Celtic defensively. Murray was unlucky. You know, Murray, I'm not going to give him too much stick. You know, he was horrific today, but he shouldn't have been in the starting 11 to begin with. He should have been Austin Trusty. He was sitting on the bench. Never even got on the bench. Got off the bench. Ridiculous. But yeah, Hearts were 1-0 up. Celtic deservedly were 1-0 down. Celtic then came into the game and got an equaliser. It was a really well worked goal. It's the only thing Celtic done in the whole bloody game, to be honest. Really good move. You know, Tanetki, who was our best player, and yet Rodgers took him off. Again, just aggravating from Rodgers. Ridiculous. Came into the side. Came inside, played it into McGregor. McGregor then played it back out to Tierney. Tierney then whipped it back in, and there was McGregor. Really good finish. McGregor played really well in the first half, but he died off in the second half. Just a whole infection of the whole bloody season came in the second half, just horrific. But Celtic were level. You know, Celtic then took over as a better team for the rest of the first half. You know, it was really all Celtic, really. Hearts, to their credit, weren't terrible, but they weren't as good as they were at the start of the game. Celtic then should have been in front. What on earth is Negron doing? You know, Negron, why is he trying to lift the ball over the goalkeeper from 2 yards out? You know, he takes a touch, beats it, the defender dives in, sends him the wrong way. What does Negron do? Instead of actually smashing it into the net or rolling it past the goalkeeper, he tries to lift it. What was he doing? It was horrific from Negron. You know, he needs to be dropped. He's a massive problem with this team. I'm so sick of him moaning at everybody else. It's not just him, but, you know, very arrogant player. You know, he has got quality. He has got quality. He's not a winger. I do get it. He's not a right winger. I do understand that. But still, no responsibility from Negron whatsoever. You know, it's never his fault in any situation. You know, but yeah, Celtic had a chance and they blew it. No surprise, they've blown everything this season. They're so shit, Celtic are. At half-time, it was Hearts 1, Celtic 1. Second half was an absolute car crash. It was pathetic from Celtic. Never got going in the second half. Hearts took over. Hearts controlled the whole second half. It was horrendous from Celtic. It really was. Just shocking. You know, Kennedy, the winger for Hearts, scored the second goal. What on earth is Negron doing? You know, Negron doesn't get... And Donovan, nobody closes the guy down. He cuts inside. He was doing it the whole bloody game. What on earth was he doing? Defensively, you know, Negron, again, why is Negron moaning? It's his responsibility. He's there throwing his arms up in the air, but yet it's his responsibility to help Donovan out as the fullback. That's a winger you've got to get back, and Nico just didn't. I know it's not his position, but Jesus Christ. Lets the guy cut inside, hits it straight into the corner. Great finish. Hearts 2-1 up, deservedly so. We can see the third goal. What on earth is the defence doing? You know, horrendous. You know, it's a really good flick from Lawrence Shankland. And then Claudio Braga, who was really quiet today. I thought he was one of the Hearts' quieter players. It was just horrendous. You know, what is Dane Murray doing? You know, Dane Murray, you know, Braga gets the ball in front of him. Dane Murray dives in. It's a penalty. It's a penalty. No complaints. You know, it's a penalty from the highlights that I've seen. Dane Murray, at that point, Dane Murray shouldn't even have been on the pitch in the first place, personally. Maybe it's a sub later in the game, but it should have been Trusty who started, you know. I'm not saying Trusty is the solution to our problems defensively without Carter Vickers, but still, you know, Trusty, I think, should have started. It was pathetic from Rodgers. Shankland stepped up, you know, into the corner. 3-1 Hearts, that was the game there, and then that was the league. The league's over. You know, Hearts, you might as well give Hearts the league. What's the fucking point for the rest of the season, you know, because the club are not going to do what we want them to, you know, and that's get rid of some of the board members who have caused this overall, you know. Rodgers won't go, you know. I've been one of Brendan's biggest supporters, but he's part of the problem now. And when it's not working, the manager's trying everything, it's still not working, you need to go. I think for his own sake, it'd be good for him to resign, but he won't because he's on a really good contract to the end of the season. People are saying he's sabotaging the team, but look at the team that he's got. It's pathetic. This team may not even finish second in the league, you know. We may even finish third or fourth, you know. We're pathetic. We'll lose the semi-final next Sunday as well to a terrible Rangers team. You know, that's the type of game we'll lose next week. You know, we lost today to a really good team. You know, Hearts are way better than us. They got more desire, more fight. You know, they're working as a team. You know, Derek McInnes is doing an excellent job. You know, Hearts have won 13 games this season, and they've beaten both Celtic and Rangers. They've gone to Ibrox and beaten Rangers 2-0. You know, that was a really good result for them. But today, they were excellent. That was their best performance of the season today. You know, they were by far the better side over in the game overall. You know, Shin came on. Shin did all right, but again, we don't play the ball quickly enough. Same with Johnny Kenny. Johnny Kenny makes these runs. We don't pass the ball to him quickly enough. You know, we're so slow. We're pathetic to watch. We really are. You know, Shin had a header which was pushed away. Hearts had an opportunity to make it 4-1, which Schmeichel saved. You know, it's a really good save from Schmeichel. But that was it. Celtic lost 3-1 to Hearts. Not surprising. I knew we were going to get beat. I knew we were going to get hammered in the end. You know, we're nowhere near good enough. As I said, mass protests need to happen now. You know, nobody should go to that game against Falkirk on a Wednesday night. We'll probably lose that as well. I know we're at home, but we'll probably get beat in that game too because we haven't got the quality. Falkirk played Rangers a few weeks ago and they should have won that game. I know Russell Martin was the manager of Rangers at the time, but Falkirk were the better side against Rangers. You know, I know we beat them in the cup earlier in the season comprehensively, but we'll probably lose that game. To be honest, Hearts will go further clear because they'll beat St Mirren, I think, who they've got on Wednesday night. We're pathetic. We're rubbish. Call the season now. You know, let's get ready for next season. I think fuck the rest of the season as far as I'm concerned. I haven't watched any games for 5 months. I'm not planning to, you know, for the rest of the season. I'll still do match reviews, but what's the fucking point of Celtic? You know, Celtic are just not going to win anything this season. We're going to go trophyless. We're not going to win a game anytime soon. You know, we think just because we beat Stern Graz, that's okay. No, we should have stepped up today and we didn't. You know, in the first half, we were the better team. I will say that. We were the better team in the first half once we got back into it. But it took a goal down for us to actually bloody be the better team. You know, pathetic. We don't score goals. We don't create. You know, Tanecki is our go-to man. And even then, you know, he fades in and out of games because teams click on to what he tries to do. You know, we got no quality whatsoever in this team, as I said. But yeah, for me, the season's over. The season was over before this game. This is definitely it now. You know, the board are an absolute joke. You know, they've done this predominantly and they should not be in that position to stay there and run this club anymore. You know, they need to be removed, but they won't be. It's very annoying because they'll come out and say, well, that's football, you know, we have to lose trophies, blah, blah, blah. No. This is not just about domestic football, it's about European football, you know, constantly throughout the last 10 years also, you know, Champions League qualifying. What have the board done for us? Nothing. You know, they don't show any ambition. They literally don't care about us. So why should they be allowed to continue as the board of this club? You know, it's ridiculous. They're losing money as well. Europa League, you know, massive a load of empty seats for the game against Stern Graz as there was against Braga. And yeah, Celtic lost the league today. Well done to Celtic. They deserve a round of applause because they're so pathetic. I've got no words to describe how bad that was. You know, it's pathetic from the highlights that I've seen. I'm so happy I didn't watch the whole game because I would have been absolutely going off my fucking nuts with how bad it is. But yeah, no other words to describe how bad it was. It's not surprising at this point. It's just getting worse. It's COVID 2.0 all over again. The board predominantly have caused this, but Rodgers has had enough chances now. I think we need to let him go. Oh, he needs to go, personally. But yeah, that's my reaction. You know, congratulations to Hearts. Going 8 points clear. It's embarrassing for Celtic. It really is, you know. That's the end of this review. I'll be back on Wednesday night, probably with another fucking negative reaction to the game against Falkirk, which I won't be watching. We'll probably lose that as well, and then we'll go bloody 11 points behind Hearts, probably. But yeah, thanks for watching this video. Take care. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.